So a couple of days ago, there was an article on Blabbermouth and maybe a couple of other heavy metal, news sources that asked Dave Mustaine why he thought people hated him. And he said it was because of the breakdown between him and Metallica and all that stuff. Well, unfortunately, there's a couple of more reasons why people hate Dave Mustaine. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is that it transfers over to his band Megadeth. So, about a year ago, we asked the question, what are 5 reasons that people hate Avenged Sevenfold? A band that tons of people love, but still seems to draw the ire of many in the heavy metal community. Megadeth is a similar band, one where it's kind of a like 'em or hate 'em attitude, so let's explore, in the same vein, 5 reasons why people hate Megadeth. Number 5, the music is inconsistent. This is probably the argument that might make the most sense, or at least feels the most organic and pure out of the 5, considering this is actually focusing on the material that Megadeth has put out throughout the years. And this is one that's actually been in the minds of metal fans, or people attempting to get into this band, ever since, the 1980s, the band's earliest moments. Killing Is My Business really set the world on fire, even though its production was extremely shoddy. In fact, it was that raw power that actually made this album what it was, and that can be proven by the remaster sounding just not as, honorable to the tradition of that first album. Peace Sells was one that continued that legacy a little bit, but then whenever you got to So Far So Good, So What, whether it be critics or fans, there's sort of this, what? That goes on. And then Rust in Peace takes it up, Countdown to Extinction takes it up, Euthanasia actually takes it down, even though it's a really solid album. Cryptic Writings and Risk, of course, take things to the gutter in the minds of most people. I disagree. And as you continue forward, it's sort of this sine length where it feels to many people that they are an up and down band. Is this a legitimate argument? Well, yeah, it actually is a legitimate argument. These guys have been extremely solid. However, I can completely and totally understand why somebody who has, become used to or started off on albums that were at the highest of highs could be a little bit dismissive of the ones that aren't quite as legendary. And once again, as I said, this is probably the one that is the most pure and makes the most sense, considering we're sticking primarily with the music. Number 4, Metallica versus Megadeth. Surprisingly enough, the Metallica versus Megadeth feud was not one that was just by the bands. This was one that actually was shared by the fans. And here's another little secret for you. This is a feud that actually continues to this day. Even though the bands themselves have made up, even though the bands themselves have made peace, the feud still rages onward. There are Metallica fanboys, Megadeth fanboys. That's all that they prefer. That's all that they will listen to. That's all that they want. They have chosen their sides, drawn their battle lines, and that is it. So because of that, there are some Metallica fans that will just never touch Megadeth, or as they like to call it, Megadave. But just the same, there are people on the other side of the tracks in the Megadeth camp that would never touch a Metallica album because they think that Lars is an asshole and that Kirk Hammett is a masturbating houseplant. No, wait, that was whenever we talked about The View, or Saint Anger, or something. We said that. Metallica's cool. Megadeth is too. This is a stupid argument. This is really dumb. The bands have made peace, so make some peace in your mind. Number 3, Dave Mustaine's voice. This one also can be considered a little bit legitimate, considering it also has something to do with the music that you hear. There are some aspects, and we talk about this whenever we do album reviews. We talk about this whenever we talk about annoying musicians, either that or musicians that are really, really bad. There's usually something that causes that bane, that causes that absolute grime to really spew from your mouth. And for a lot of people, they can't get into Megadeth because they don't like Dave Mustaine's voice. They don't like that raw, almost nasally, sometimes conversational, strange way. It's a tone that really is one of its kind, and because of that uniqueness, because there's nothing out there that really seems to compare to it, even within the confines of the Big Four or the thrash metal scene, that's what's really making a voice that is either liked or disliked. And those who end up disliking the voice, end up not being able to really get into the band, perhaps respecting what the band is able to do musically, but not being able to get past Dave Mustaine's voice. Again, I'm going to give a lot of folks the benefit of the doubt on this one, that they at least tried to really enjoy the music and still tried to really enjoy the band, but Dave Mustaine, his voice was just too distracting to them. Either that or something that was just off-putting to their ears. Now, before you make complaints about this, and before you make comments saying that these people are stupid, think about some of the people that you can't listen to that they might be able to listen to. This is something that's a little bit more subjective rather than objective, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. But it's something that's 100% based off of somebody's taste. Number 2, that Dave Mustaine turned Christian. Surprisingly enough, this is a legitimate argument. After Dave Mustaine announced that he had become a Christian, and believe me, ever since then we've talked about a lot of things that Dave has sort of either said or done, or how his supports have shifted, how his rhetoric seems to have changed, how his overall comfort in things has shifted. We just talked about the band Rotting Christ a couple of weeks ago. Dave actually refused to perform a concert with them on the bill because of their band name. And this has a lot of people noticeably irritated. This has caused people to either not get into the band, avoid the band, or stop listening to the band. Something that's stupid. I know. You're probably looking at me like, people really stopped listening to Megadeth over that? Yeah. I remember having conversations with a couple of metalheads that said specifically to me whenever Dave turned Christian was the day that I moved away from Megadeth. And they were completely and totally legitimate about it. I could have preached to the choir or preached to the high heavens that the newest Megadeth albums were actually really, really solid. And we're talking albums such as 13, but it wouldn't have mattered to them. It wouldn't have mattered. Dystopia could have been the best album of all time, but these folks were not going to be willing to check it out, simply because Dave seemed to have done a philosophy 180. And that's where a lot of people have a little bit of a problem with it. It's because it seems like such a philosophical 180 for Dave Mustaine. It seems almost like he's taking this sort of typical and cowards or simple way out, whenever in reality the only thing that really shifted was his doctrine. Has it made him a little bit more irritating? Has he now been speaking out against things that he would have never spoken out against before? Yeah, but there's still one thing that you need to remember, and that's reason number 1, that Dave Mustaine is a dick. Yeah, Dave Mustaine's been a dick for a long time. Dave Mustaine's been a dick since the 1980s. He's never been one to really keep his mouth closed. A lot of people say that Kerry King or whatever is now kind of in that realm, and the same thing with Corey Taylor because they have microphones stuck up their ass all the time. But Dave Mustaine was one that made headlines or, made news, even though people weren't necessarily trying to stick the microphone up his ass. This is a guy that famously was able to get into just shouting matches and feuds with different bands. He was kind of the Kanye West of his time whenever he's talking big on himself, however also talking down on those around him. And this is something that has continued, and as Dave has become more politically motivated, as Dave has become a little bit more religiously motivated, as seen in number 2, it just seems like the things that he says irritate more and more people. And it actually ends up being bad press for a lot of folks that perhaps might be trying to get into Megadeth. Either that, or folks that are into Megadeth but now just can't seem to stand what their band leader is yammering on about. And since you have to hear that voice every time you turn on a Megadeth song, that can be really distracting. It can actually change your opinion of a band that you've loved for a long time. And you might wonder why. There's a psychological reason. I'd cite it, but I don't have 20 fucking minutes to kill. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. 5 reasons why people hate Megadeth, the band. And this is not necessarily those who are just trying to get into them or blindly hating them. This also includes people that liked the band at one point but don't anymore. Yeah, this is actually a group that has a lot of wayward, stray members of the flock that have drifted away based around these 5 reasons and perhaps some others that are a little bit more minor. And they probably will not return. Is there a reason that you didn't see on this list or didn't hear about on this list? What's your reason that people hate Megadeth? Let me know in the comments below. And once again, let it be known and let it be clear to everybody out there. I'm a Megadeth fan. I love Megadeth. I've loved Megadeth for a long time. This video is in no way really a reflection of my feelings about Megadeth. This is instead something that's a little bit more explorative to the fan bases themselves, explorative to the fans themselves, and kind of looking into things a little bit psychologically to see why people dislike different styles of music, different bands within music, whatever it may be. If you think there's another band that we should do the 5 reasons people hate or 5 reasons people love for, post that in the comments below. This might become a series. This might become a thing. It might not be something that we do every week. Might not be something we necessarily even do every month. But I'd like to do a couple more of these, because I think they're interesting. Let me know what you think. I'm CoverKillerNation, and I'll talk to you later.